from the lands across the ocean to the land beyond the mountains, through the Sahara, we bring all the sport news, live analysis, expert discussions on trending stories in politics, business, socio-economic, sports, and documentaries. So catch all the updates on the happenings around the globe. Stay focused on the fact today, only on ATN.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is Society Watch on Atlantic Television Network, and joining me this afternoon on this conversation is a public affairs analyst. I'm talking about Chukwusi Ike Chukwu. Good to have you.
Thank you.
Again,
good to be here with you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for joining me today. All right, let's look at the first story for today from FCT. Residents of the Federal Capital Territory are struggling to access the federal government subsidized 50 kg bags of rice priced at 40,000 naira. Many have been waiting at the Nigerian Agricultural Insurance Corporation headquarters in Abuja since the process began, but payment difficulties and long delays have caused frustration. People arrive as early as 6 a.m. to get on the list, but progress has been slow, with only a few allowed in at a time. Residents complain about the cumbersome process, saver issues, and lack of access, calling for a simplified payment method including online platforms. The rice distribution is part of the government's initiative to alleviate economic hardship and improve food security. We have been hearing about this 40,000 naira rice that was heard at some point, because they said that a few or some civil servants got the rice at 40,000 naira and decided to sell it, at the rate of that was 85,000 naira, which is, if you look at it, is not even a way of alleviating economic hardship. And again, if this is really to alleviate economic hardship like it is stated here, and I'm wondering why it is so difficult for people to pay for it, it's so difficult to even get access into the place, it's so difficult to even lay hands on it. And even the people that have been able to lay hands on it, they are buying it and selling it in a very high price. What do you call this? Is this rice really meant for economic, to alleviate economic hardship? Will you say so?
The question to ask is this: are there even really rice? Because I've rarely seen anybody who bought the rice. I've not seen anybody in town here or any other place that say, oh, I bought the rice. Of course, you can hear, oh, people say they bought, like the news now the other day, they say, like this is what you're reading now. If you read further, see the guy that said, I came on Monday, they said it's for journalists, and then the day I came, a journalist was here, they didn't attend to them. The best thing for government, see, government is not good at hawking rice or any other item. It is not in the place of government to become a rice seller. Make policies that would make these things flock to market. If government really have rice, maybe from the reserve or whatever, push it into the market. By the time the law of demand and supply acts on it, the market forces act on it, the price will naturally come down. It may not be 40,000, but it will come down. But by the time you have it here, you know, people spend productive days queuing up to buy rice. And at the end of the day, what is the guarantee that they will get it? Like the guy said, making online payment. But beyond the online payment, after making the payment, what is the guarantee that there is even rice to get?
Well, for them to say that,
this is FCT.
For them to say that just a few that are able to gain access into that place, it means that indeed this is not an audio rice.
They didn't point out anybody who has bought the rice.
They don't need to point, but based on we are saying this based on what we have here, the story that we have. But looking at it, is it that the problem of Nigeria that Nigerians are having is actually rice? Because Nigerians complain about fuel subsidy removal, they bring rice. Nigerians said they did good road. The federal government comes up with rice. Nigerians are talking about the stability of light, electricity. The federal government comes up with rice. Apart from even asking whether rice is the only food that we have in Nigeria, that is aside. But is that the problems of Nigeria?
You see, things have gone so bad that this particular government, their only definition of governance is palliative. And their only definition of palliative
is rice.
They don't even understand that there can be palliative in maybe health sector, education, because the last I checked, even school fees are going up. Even the federal government unity schools, their school fees was increased. School fees increased. That's the unity schools, which are the places where government can even bring in palliative that can even have a long-lasting effect than this. At every point you give rice, and you hardly see people who receive the rice. The last time, if you recall, they say 200 or 2,000 bags of rice has been given to each state. Till date, we are yet to see any state that can boldly say, oh, we have received this site. The other day during the week, one of the ministers was talking about government, the federal government or the presidency have allocated, did they say 200 or 2,000 bags of rice for each of the ministers? For crying out loud, that's not governance.
To give to the vulnerables?
Yes, to give to the vulnerables.
And which we do not know the definition of vulnerables now.
Exactly. But when did it even become the duty of ministers to be carrying rice left, right, and center and distributing, make policies, push these things into the market? See, the essence of having reserves is when there is scarcity like this, even not just for food items, even like the US where they usually have petroleum reserves, at time of scarcity or hike in price, they can push in those reserves into the market to cushion the price. By the time you have more supply, of course, that's a simple law of the economics. The higher the supply, the lower the price. By the time you have more supply, the prices will come down. It's not for government to start selling rice, to start asking for people and for their NIN. I mean, it's not something anybody wants to.
All right, thank you so much. Let's look at the next story for today from Osun State. Osun State Police Command arrested 7 suspects for selling human parts and corpse baiting water for rituals. Among those arrested were mortuary attendants Johnson Daniel and Adetunji Okonade, who were found selling remains and ritual water. Additional suspects were discovered with human skull fragments and rituals items. Additionally, 3 individuals were detained for promoting the Yoruba nations and denouncing Nigeria. All suspects have been charged in Federal High Court following investigations. One that shall really never end. This is issue. Yeah, we know that security operatives so far has been able to arrest and also bring to the book those people that are involved in selling human parts. There was a time that we saw in a report that somewhere in the south there is a particular market meant for human parts. If you want to get human parts, you can just go there. And in this situation that a mortuary attendant is included, is among them. And I know that there was this, okay, I wouldn't say that because, well, it has not been proven or I haven't seen it before. Where do they get the body parts from if the mortuary attendant is included? And again, selling water from the disease for rituals. What's your take on that?
This thing also goes further to show the decay in society. For the selling the water, getting water they used to bathe the corpse, that can, you don't need to think too far to know how they get it, since they are probably the one that dress the corpse before handing it over to the family of the disease and all that. And I don't think any family asks for the water. I mean, you would have naturally thought that the water has been thrown away. But the human parts they sell.
And that's what I wanted to ask. If I don't have to think too far for the water,
yeah,
then
how do they get the human part? It probably shows that there is a lapse in the system. I mean, for all I know, people collect their dead whole, no body parts missing. Could it be that these are maybe corpses that has been abandoned or unaccounted for or something like that? Because if it is the natural way of depositing a corpse, you are bereaved. It also questions the system. It probably shows that there is a lapse in the system. I mean, in the mortuary management system. I don't know which of the mortuary, if it's a government, or then it means that they have to tighten up their security, and it also means that society needs to be enlightened more. This craze for ritual, if you push further now, you realize that this ritual may not be far from money ritual. Even though it's not stated there, but that's the craziest thing people do now. Everybody, this craze for, that's the most common ritual you see most people getting involved in. But whatever it is, it points to the fact that there is a need to tighten up security in every aspect of our institutions. Because this part, the last I check, even unclaimed unclaimed corpse in the mortuary, rather than use it for rituals, they can be used for more productive. I mean, used as cadavers in schools, medical schools for learning and all those. So, I mean, it's not something that one should think of in this 21st century, to think that people buy human
if
parts.
your curiosity
it's appalling.
Is a fact that maybe it could be those corpses that have been abandoned there for quite a long time.
It still doesn't justify it
but
anyway.
The pictures that we see, once after a long time, I mean, that turns to stick. It means that you can't possibly cut it.
I wouldn't know, but whatever the case is, it's appalling. Like I said, the answer to it is tightening up security in the system, because somebody should also account for it and know that, okay, we had so number, where are they? I mean, you can't just dispose of them. Somehow you're still human, and what you're seeing there is a remains of a human. To think that anybody has the guts to, and then these rituals they talk about, hope they don't use them to make something they give people to consume.
If you ask me, who will I ask? Well, this is a call for people to be very careful where they enter, what they do, what they eat, because it has come to our notice that a lot of persons buy water that from cups.
Well, they only say they use it for ritual anyway. You don't know whether it's a consumable ritual or
We don't know, but people still have to be very careful.
Yeah,
I mean, this is appalling.
absolutely.
Because you don't know whatever thing it is, and they are saying it's rituals. But the good part of it is that, yes, indeed, they have been arrested. And we hope that they will be able to fish others out that are also into this.
Yeah, most importantly, it's high time society begin to carry out an enlightenment program for people to desist from this.
But
these arts don't belong to the 21st century.
But do you think that this society is not, we are not enlightened enough?
What is our definition of enlightenment here? If you don't have any remorse cutting a body part for the sake of ritual, whatever that ritual is, that means enlightenment cannot be complete without the mind. That means something is still wrong with the mind. That means the mind still belongs to some centuries back where such is acceptable. That does not belong to the 21st century. That does not belong to the Nigerian society we want to have. So it shows that we still need to pull out some people, some yesterday people as it were that are here today. We still have to drag them into this place. Since we can't push them back into yesterday, they're already here with us, so we have to.
All right, and then the next story for today is from Borno State. First Lady Oluremi Tinubu donated 500 million to support flood victims in Maiduguri, Borno, during a sympathy visit to Governor Babagana Zulum. Represented by Nana Kashim Shetima, Tinubu commended the state's effort and pledged ongoing support through the Revenue Hope initiatives, which focuses on youth and women. Zulum expressed gratitude for the donations and highlighted the empowerment provided by RHI to women and vulnerable groups. He also noted President Tinubu's recent visit to the state to show solidarity with the flood-affected people. Well, first of all, we should say thank you to the First Lady for donating 500 million naira to the flood victims. That's from Borno State. But my concern is so far, the donation that people have actually given so far, if summing up together, is up to 17 billion. But we saw in a report where it could also be recalled that the governor, that is Zulum, Babagana Zulum, actually gave 10,000 naira each to the flood victims that are actually in the camp, and also 25 kg bag of rice. And I'm like, despite all these monies that have been donated, is that what they can do to actually alleviate the effects of the flood on the people? Now, yeah, people have come in, people are donating. But the people they donated this money for, are they feeling the impact that indeed they are not alone? And you know that 10,000 naira cannot sustain one for 1 week. So what do you think about this?
Well, you know, you already mentioned the figure. There's another story I saw somewhere about figure. My take on that figure is that, okay, thank God somebody is even, documenting it to have it data that, okay, this is the amount. That's very fantastic that a figure can be put to it that this amount has been realized. But another thing that comes to mind, which is typical what has happened, I think we discussed here some time ago about flood and how government handles flood in Nigeria. You see, beyond this money is coming in, does the government even know how many people that has been affected by this flood that need this help? Then you raise the question of what has been given and how does it correlate with the amount.
Exactly.
So far. You see, there is a video that went around late last week, early this week also. The manner is, you see, we have a culture of impunity here. That viral video shows supposedly aid workers, emergency workers on a boat, engine boat, giving aid to the victims. The so-called aid workers found it dignifying to throw bread at the flood victims. Some of the bread
that was in
even
Niger
falling
State
into the water, and then you are pointing to people to come and swim. Like, with all this money, and then I also hope, just thinking, hope with the monies coming in, hope it is not becoming business for some people rather than doing what they should do to avoid. Because all we need at the end of the day would be a system where this flood can be averted. We may not be able to stop the flood from happening as
because it's a natural disaster.
Some are natural, some are man-made. This seems to be a man-made disaster.
Okay, you don't know. If you say this seems, that means you don't even know.
Let's
just leave it as a natural disaster.
No, this is not a natural disaster.
Why did you say it's a man-made? Because it said that there was no collapse of Alua Dam at all, that it wasn't from there. But
the pictures show it that this is a result of the dam that collapsed.
And they came up to actually debunk the news that it's not from Alua Dam. A lot of persons were saying that it's dam. They said the dam is still intact. The dam is still okay. Yeah, because people were actually like, a warning came that something of this nature is going to happen because of the dam. And they actually, of course, they have already allocated about, that's 5.6 million naira about for the state government to actually do something before now. That is an ecological fund that is meant for anything disaster, but nothing happened.
For environmental disaster, not just anything disaster, for environmental related.
Exactly. And now they came out to debunk that the issue of the flood is a natural disaster. It's not as the result of the collapse of Alua Dam, because the dam is still intact.
Okay, but my point is, where I was even heading to is, let us not overflog the issue of natural disaster or not, but they didn't point out if it's not the dam. They didn't tell you what happened, because if it's a natural disaster, what natural thing happened to make it a natural disaster? Was there a river overflowing? Was there a rainfall that led to it? I mean, they should have said that. But the thing is this, we may not be able to even stop the flood from happening. Like just yesterday, there is a warning from Cameroon about the Ladum Dam. They're about to release water. And the government typically will just tell the people, like, casually, do what you may with the information. That's not the responsibility of government. It's not just to give the information. We may not be able to prevent the flood from coming, but we can prevent the consequences.
Okay.
Yes. So these things, as it happens, after collecting of this money, what is government plan to forestall these things from happening? We can't be suffering like this. And this, beyond when the water would have receded, now it's going to have consequences for next year, because food crops has been affected, harvest has been affected. It was in the same Bruno that they talked about the zoo in Medugri. The zoo, somehow they said 80% of animals in the zoo has been killed. These are heritage that ought to be preserved rather than letting them die. You know, those animals that are dead now and the ones that are escaped, like they say they are crocodiles. You know, what is the plan to retrieve them, and what is the plan to ensure that these things don't happen again? So like I said, we may not be able to stop these things from happening, whether it's natural or man-made, but we can make plans to avert the consequences, like the warning that has come from the Cameroonian authority that this would happen. This is not the first time it happened. It happened last year, it happened, you know, like that. What has the government done, and what is the government doing? It's not enough to tell the people, hey, come on, there will be flood. It's just like rainfall. I may not stop the rain from coming, but I sure can stop the rain from drenching me. So it's the same thing. The government can stop us from having dire consequences of this flood. And until they begin to do that, we may not have found an answer.
Okay, but again, let's look at this. We know that we are in a country where a lot of persons build on the
waterway,
right? In a situation right now, the report has come, the warning has come. What is the government supposed to do? Are they supposed to rebuild houses for people where off waterways? Are they supposed to, if not building for them, are they supposed to take them? Are we expecting the government to start building a new apartment for people? Are we expecting the government to move people from this country to another country? What exactly are we expecting? What are they supposed to do? Please let me understand.
In the first place, are people supposed to have built in the waterway? Why did they build on waterway? Are there authorities that ought to have stopped that? Why didn't they stop that? If government have to relocate people, if government have to relocate people, that's one of the responsibilities of government. But the question is, why did people build in the waterway before? Where were the town planners and the town planning authority who approved those buildings? Because some of these buildings, we say, oh, they build on waterway. They are not.
Okay.
So if government has wrongly approved it and they have to relocate some people, they do. But beyond locating, like that of the Cameroon, initially there was a plan to have dam where these waters can be collected. You see, most of these things cannot be left to the individual citizens. There is little the individual citizen can do to avert some of these things, but the government can do a whole lot more to ensure that the consequences, because even the guy who has built on the waterway, he may have been responsible for the flood, the problem of the flood, but the problem when it comes will not be borne by him alone. It's going to be borne by the society at large, whether you built on the waterway, whether you know there is something called waterway or not, whether you, I mean, even very far from the waterway. So that's why the government should know what to do and do it very well. If they have to relocate people, this emergency approach should be stopped. We can have a long plan in time that, okay, from now to so time we would have damn people living in this area. If you have to move, we move you. And this is not a case of, oh, we wanted them to move. They say no. If the right approach is adopted, both those that want to move and those that don't want to move will eventually move, because we have seen in the past where government took people's land at times for good cause. But the thing is, government was determined to take those properties, whether people like it or not. Those properties we are taking. So if they have to do it again, please, they should go ahead.
All right, when we return from this short break, we will still touch this story a little bit before we move to the next story. Do stay with us. This is Society Watch on Atlantic Television Network.
From the lines across the ocean to the land beyond the mountains, through the Sahara, we bring all the sport news, live analysis, expert discussions on trending stories in politics, business, socio-economics, sports, and documentaries. So catch all the updates on the happenings around the globe. Stay focused on the fact today, only on ATN.
The people of Maiduguri need your help. A catastrophic flood has engulfed the city, leaving over 1 million residents stranded and fighting for survival. Entire communities are submerged, with people trapped inside homes and on rooftops, cut off from food, clean drinking water, and essential supplies. Health experts are warning of a potential outbreak of deadly diseases, and medical facilities are out of commission. The situation is dire. Helicopters, boats, and high-riding trucks capable of navigating the treacherous, waterlogged areas are urgently required to reach the countless men, women, and children still awaiting rescue. The Nigerian media is issuing a desperate plea to the government, humanitarian organizations, international actors, and citizens across the nation. Step in now, before it's too late. For more information on how you can help, contact Professor Usman A. Tar, the Honorable Commissioner for Information and Internal Security, Borno State, on 0809-233-3955. Every second counts.
This is powered by Atlantic Television Network.
From the lines across the ocean to the land beyond the mountains, through the Sahara, we bring all the sport news, live analysis, expert discussions on trending stories in hot
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is Society Watch on Atlantic Television Network. Like I promised that when we return from the short break, we'll actually touch the other story a little bit before we move. I think I should do that. I remember the last time that I talked about a first lady donated money. Fortunate enough, it was still Ike Chukwu that I had on set, and then he said that it was not constitutional for the First Lady of the state to start doing charities, to start donating, except they have been doing that before.
The responsibility of governing, whether it is the sub-state unit or the state of Nigeria or even local government, lies with the elected officials, or maybe in some cases appointed political office holders, not with their spouse. So if she did what she did from as an act of charity from her personal funds, good for her. Like I said before, I'm not one who celebrates first ladies and their so-called charity work. So if she did it from her personal account, good for her. We thank her the way we are thanking every other person that has contributed to alleviating the suffering of the good people of Maiduguri who are suffering at this time. But if she is doing it as maybe Madam First Lady from government coffers, then there's a problem with that, like I keep saying.
Okay, you still see it as a problem irrespective of
the
problem that's going on right now in Maiduguri?
There is not even just that, there is even another report. You know, we mix up things a lot here. There's a report, a list of those who have donated. You hear that, oh, Borno State Governor gives sorry, Yobe State Governor gives amount, Bauchi State Governor
State and all that.
amount. What comes to mind is it Kano State Governor that gave, or Kano State government?
Where there are some with that is written governor.
If it is the governor giving as an individual from his money, maybe he say good. But if it is the government, it should also be recorded as the government, and there is nothing wrong with either of them, whether it's the governor or the government that is giving. There is nothing wrong with either, but for the sake of accountability, it should be clearly stated who is giving. Is it the governor or the government? So it will be clearly stated. So you don't think that, oh, it is the governor that gave. When it's time to give account, all of a sudden say, oh, it is the government that gave, and not the
All right,
government.
thank you. Let's look at the next story on minimum wage. Federal government has mandated that private sector recruitment agencies are held to the 70,000 minimum wage, warning that non-compliance will be penalized. This wage law applies to all workers in Nigeria, both government and private sector employees. The permanent secretary of the Ministry of Labor and Employment, Ekoholom Daju, emphasized the legal consequences for paying less than the set amount. The Employers Association for Private Employment Agencies of Nigeria supports the wage but seeks clarifications on whether it is not net or gross. The Lagos NLC chairman Fumilayo Sesi stressed the need for private employers to comply with the minimum wage despite economic challenges and warned against non-enforcement. Okay, first of all, the NYSC, let me start from there. They are still waiting for directives to come if they should pay their core members 70,000 naira or not. And some states, they were still battling with it. I think about just 2 or 3 states have been able to implement it so far. But the rest, they are still on a scale. They are not balanced yet. And they are saying that any, be it government workers or private sectors, if they don't pay 70,000 naira minimum wage, they will go in for, the consequence is a jail term. Do you think that that will stand?
Yeah, when I saw the news, the first thing that came to mind naturally was to know if the person talking, the minister, or the representative of the minister from the Ministry of Labor talking, if he was talking from the standpoint of law or he was just entertaining his audience with respect to the jail term. And I looked at it. Funnily, there is a minimum wage act that provides for what is called offenses and failure to do this. And there is a provision that if you fail to abide by that, if you fail to abide by the minimum wage act, there are consequences for it, which includes I think a 250,000 naira fine or a 6 months imprisonment or the two at the same time. So there is a provision for jail term in the law. But the question is, how willing are they to implement it? Why has it not been implemented in the past? Because even the now outdated minimum wage, many private sector workers, private sector employers did not pay. Thereby, many private sector employees did not earn that. Funny enough, it's even on record that a few state governments didn't comply with that. So when the provision of the law...
Was there consequences then?
Yeah, exactly where I'm going to...
If the worst, did they do anything about that?
That's exactly my point, because I looked at the minimum wage. There was the 2019 minimum wage act before the 2024 minimum wage act, and the 2019 provided for a fine or a jail term or the two together. So those that failed to implement it, why was the consequences not brought upon them? Then the provision focused on more on private sector employers. What of the government employer? That's the government that refused to, whether it's government agency, government parastatals, or even the government itself that refused, whether it be state or local government that refused to implement it. What is the consequences? Why are these consequences not followed up? I mean, it's one thing to have it written in law. It's another thing for it to be followed up. These are the things that the Ministry of Labor and the NLC should be doing. It is not enough to have minimum wage sign and the NLC sing solidarity forever and everybody goes home. Are these being implemented?
You know that before this minimum wage 70,000 was implemented, it was very difficult for the federal government to come up with something tangible. And even when the 70,000 naira was being implemented by the federal government, a lot of state governors were not comfortable with it. So when you said that, you wonder why they're not implementing, because some of them are trying to maybe this story actually came up because they realized that some of them have put this behind the cupboard. They are not ready to do something.
No, if you even talk of the 70,000 naira minimum wage, not too many people are implementing it now. Even the federal government, from the last I checked, is yet to start the implementation.
Signing into bill, I mean to say.
Yeah, it has been. No, private sectors don't need to sign it into law. It is just for the federal government to sign it into law. Maybe the state government with their local state assemblies can domesticate same, but the private sectors don't need another bill to do that. They just follow. They just follow suit and get it done. But the thing is this: now, when they cry that they can't implement it, before you arrive at a figure for minimum wage, the committees were set up, and the last we checked, those committees comprises state governments and their representative and the federal government. So they have what they call tripartite, people being represented. So that representation, at that point, that's where their voice, by the time they arrived at 70,000, it goes to say that is an agreed amount. So coming back to say, oh, we can't pay it, is not proper, because at this time of making the law, then this governor, some of the argument governors make is that, some states have more money than the others. The states that have more money, you can't expect state A with so amount to pay the same thing with state B. Hey, come on, if the governor of state A and governor of state B gets the same salary, the same allowance, then pay their workers the same thing. The only way that can happen is that maybe the governors of the states that have less money should also earn less. I think by the time we place everybody on a minimum wage scale, it probably will make it easier for them to understand.
So far, we didn't see where they have any hotline that if a particular private firm is not paying their workers up to so amount, they should report to so place. So how would they know that? This is Nigeria, not just a community.
Well, hotline or no hotline, if the government is serious to implement it, if the Ministry of Labour is serious to follow through, they will follow through. They have their records. There is the NLC there that should monitor. So after all, some of these workers work in places where they are organized labours, they pay check-out dues and all this. So government would always have a way of knowing. The thing is, are they interested to know? It is not just the worker reporting. Even if there is hotline and nobody takes the call, what happens? But if government is seriously interested in ensuring that everybody follows suit, they know how to go about it.
All right, thank you. And the last story for today is from Zambia State.
Or rather, Zambia.
Anyway, I think it's a state, of course. A Zambian woman, including clients and job seekers, in exchange for job promises and loan approvals, the bank suspended her after over 10 men filed complaints. At 39 years old, she remained unmarried, focusing on obtaining various academic qualifications before finding a partner. Wow, this is funny. Well, this is a senior executive bank, of course, a banker. And the report says that, though this is not in Nigeria, this is from Zambia, that she has had carnal knowledge with over 200 men. That is, they can't ascertain anymore. Over 200. If you're seeking for a job, she will go down with you. If you are trying to a loan, she will go down with you. And so far, 10 men have filed complaints, and she's on suspension as it stands. Yeah, the educational qualification is not really the matter here, because anybody can decide, I don't want to marry till I get all these qualifications. So that's, by the way, for her. And of course, it's a plus for her. But how do you see this story? A woman, for that matter, luring men like this. It shows that sexual misbehavior is not restricted to the male gender alone. It shows that, maybe like what they say, what a man can do, a woman can do better.
Better. I mean, but it's terrible. This thing goes to say, like I keep saying, there is need for check in every system. You know, perhaps, just perhaps, if there were checks, she probably wouldn't have gotten this far. And maybe there's a conspiracy of silence from the men also, that we are lured for 200, over 200 to have
just 10
quiet. I mean, if the report is nice, is real, does it mean that the over 200 men all got loan, job, and whatever she promised But whatever the case is, it's not a matter that should be swept under the carpet. It should be properly looked into and appropriate disciplinary measures applied. But it also showed, like I said earlier, that sexual misbehavior, and indeed any misbehavior, cannot be tagged to a particular set, maybe whether it be a gender or any other. Criminality, crime is a human thing, and where discipline is lacking, anybody, irrespective of the gender, age, state, tribe, or whatever, can be a perpetrator.
He came to complain, and of course, a normal human being will not just sit down and say, yes, okay, you people have reported me, I have used over 190. How come at least up to 100 or at least 50 didn't complain? It's possible
that there would also be an element of intimidation. For example, the persons who we are looking for employment, if they got the employment, they are likely not going to voice out, because maybe they are continuous staying on the job, maybe dependent on either continuing the relationship or at least keeping quiet on what has happened in the past. Those that got loan, you just know that if those that got loan, the due process may not have followed, so they probably won't have the boldness to. She may even be the one blackmailing them if you talk.
But I want to ask another question before we call it a day. Now, because she's an adult.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah.
And whosoever she spoke with, whether it was out of a convention or whatsoever, there was an agreement. So if I said that for you to get this thing, this is what you have to do for me, and you agree, and then we get into it and you get what you want, even if it is being reported, am I still supposed to go in for that?
When you say agreement, it's like saying victims of rape shouldn't talk because they had agreement in quote. Once there is an unfair advantage there, you can no longer call it agreement as it were, because she had the upper hand there. There was an unfair advantage. She had something they desperately needed. So it can, and it won't be very fair to say there was an agreement there. Let's say there was a coercion, there was intimidation. So it won't really be fair to say there's an agreement. Yeah, when we put it like this, we have a way of driving the victims into their shell, not to talk. What we should